Today in Scratch, we're going to talk about costumes. Costumes are how your sprite looks. Each sprite can have more than one costume, and you can view these by clicking on the Costume tab when your sprite is selected. So you'll see here I have my sprite selected because it's surrounded by that blue border. And if we go over to the Costumes tab, you see the paint editor, but you also see that this sprite has two costumes, Costume 1 and Costume 2. Now you'll notice if I click on them fast enough, it looks like my sprite is moving. So costumes are useful when making animations, and you can think of each costume as a page in a flipbook. Now I'm going to cut over to my flipbook to demonstrate this. Okay, here's our flipbook, and you'll see each page of the flipbook, the image will change just slightly, so that when you actually flip through the book quickly, it makes it look like the image is moving. Okay, so we're back in Scratch, and I just want to show you how to use the blocks to change these costumes in order to create an animation. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and get another sprite, one with more costumes, just to make it more interesting. I know the ballerina has like 4 costumes. I'm going to delete the cat. And then I go over to my costumes and I see the ballerina has 4 costumes. Now, the blocks that control the costumes are under looks, the looks category. And there are 2 of them. There's the switch costume 2, and then there's a pull down menu of, you know, all the different costumes that are available. And there's also the block next costume. So what we're gonna do is use the control blocks and the looks blocks in order to get our sprite animated. So let's start with our event. We always have to start with an event block. And then we're gonna take a repeat block. And we're going to use the switch costume 2 blocks. Now, you have to actually put in a wait block in between switching costumes, or it's just gonna move so fast you're not gonna see the movement. You're not gonna see the costumes being switched. So make sure that you put in wait blocks in between. So I'm just gonna drag out all the different costumes and the wait blocks. And then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna start, when the flag is clicked, it's gonna be at ballerina A. And then I'm going to repeat 10 times. I'm going to switch the costume to ballerina B. And then I'm going to switch the costume to ballerina C. And then ballerina D. And then ballerina A. So, and now you see she's already dancing. So it's just repeating, switching the costume 10 times, and there's a 1 second wait in between each one. Now we can make her go a little faster by changing the 1 second to like a 0.5 seconds in between. 0.5, and we probably want to add a wait block at the end too, so there's actually a wait between the last switch and the first switch. So let's have her go a little faster. Let's see what happens there. So there she goes. She's dancing, and that's just changing costumes, and it looks like she's moving. The other thing that you can do is just, you can use the forever loop, and forever just have it switch to next costume. Probably should also throw in a wait in there. So let's see if that happens. So now forever she's going to start at this costume and then forever switch to the next costume that's on the list of our costumes. And then wait 1 second before she switches to the next costume. So that was, you know, a little bit easier if you want to do it that way. But if you want to select specific costumes, you'll have to use the switch costume to blocks. Okay, so I'll just show you what happens when we take the wait block out. You see she moves so fast you can hardly see her. So you can just play with the wait block and try out some different times. So that was 1 second. I'm going to do half a second. And she's moving at a pretty good speed there. So just play with that, whatever, you know, speed you want. Okay, we just went over a few of the control blocks, such as the repeat loops, the forever loop, and the wait block. So now I want to go over the if-then statements. There's an if-then, and there's also an if-then else. So these are useful. So if something happens, some condition is met, then some action is going to happen. So the conditions that need to be met can be found like in sensing blocks, also in the operators. You'll see they have the same shape as the shape that is here where the condition needs to go. So what I want to go over are the sensing blocks now. The sensing blocks are used to detect or sense things in a Scratch project, and you can use them as conditions that need to be met before something can happen. And it's very typical to use them in the if-then statements. So I'm just going to go over using one of them. Now, if you want to find out more about each sensing block or any kind of block in Scratch, you can use this block help tool. If you just click on it with your mouse, and then you can click on any block you want to know about, and you click on it, it'll give you information about what that block does over here. So this is a very useful tool. So what I'm going to do is have a condition of when a certain key is pressed, then something's going to happen. Now you see this shape is the same as this one. Now if I drag it over here, you'll see it start to glow. When you see it glow, you know you've got it in the right position and you can let it go. You can drop it with your mouse and it'll fit in there. Now this one has a big drop down menu. You can use any of these letters on your keyboard to control your sprite. So I'm going to have a sprite move. I'm going to have it move right with the right arrow. So if key right arrow pressed, then, now if I want to move it to the right, I go to the motion blocks and I'm going to do change X by 10 because the X axis goes left and right, and plus 10 is going to the right. Next we're going to do another one, if then, and another sensing block. And this one we're going to have left arrow. If the left arrow is pressed, we want it to go to the left. So we're going to do change X by minus 10, and that'll go in the left direction. And then we'll do another one, if sensing block, and we'll do up arrow. And the up arrow, we gotta change the Y. So we'll do change the Y by plus 10 or 10. And one more, let's do if then down arrow then we'll change the Y minus 10 so it goes down. Now let's try this. I'm going to put it in a forever loop. so we can forever control these keys, this sprite with the keys. And then when the flag is clicked, it's going to be able to be controlled by all these arrows, the right arrow, the left arrow, the up arrow, and the down arrow. So let's try it out. I'm going to move it around with my up arrow, down arrow, left arrow, right arrow. So now my ballerina can move with the arrows. Now, if we wanted to have another sprite on there, let's do the balloon. We can have the balloon here, and then we can have another if-then statement. And we can use the touching sensing block, and there's a pull down menu. You can either have it touching the mouse pointer, which is this mouse, the edge, which is the edge of your stage, or you can have it touching a sprite. And so here it has the selection balloon 1, which is the sprite that I just added. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to a if-then statement. So now if my ballerina is touching the balloon, then I'm going to have it play a sound. Play the sound pop. So let's try that out. So I'm going to move her around. I'm going to have her touch the balloon. Oh. And so there, if she's touching the balloon, it will play that sound. So that covered the sensing blocks and the control blocks, which are super important in Scratch, and you can do so much with those. Okay, so before we get on our computers and start scratching, I just want to cover one more thing, and that's there's usually more than one way to do something in Scratch. For example, if you want to get your Scratch to move across the stage, there's a few different ways. So let's start with, of course, we need to start with an event. So I'll start with when the flag is clicked, and we're gonna always have to have a reset. So your sprite will always be at the position you want him to start at. So we're starting at 0, 0. And I'm going to use a repeat loop and the motion block move 10 steps. And we know that from the center of the stage to the right side of the stage, it's 240 steps. So we want to make sure that the repeat loop and the move, the 10 steps equal 240. So I'm going to do repeat 24 times, moving 10 steps. So 24 times 10 is 240. So now if we click the green flag, he's going to move to the other side. And if we click the green flag again, he's going to go back to the center of the stage and repeat that action. Now the other way to do that is, let's do when the space key is pressed. We can have the motion block glide. Oh, we want him to start at 0, 0 again. So again, you always have to make sure you reset your sprite. So when the space key is pressed, he's going to be reset to the center at 0, 0, and then he's going to glide 1 second to x equals 240, y equals 0. You can play around with the time. So let's try out that one. So when the space key is pressed, he will do the same thing. The last one that I want to cover, we'll do when the sprite is clicked as our event. And again, make sure you reset your sprite. So he's going to go to x equals 0, y equals 0. And we're going to have a repeat until block that's in the controls. And you're going to go to the sensing blocks, and you can use the touching edge. So pull down, use the pull down menu and select edge, and that would be the edge of the stage. So you use the sensing block touching edge, repeat, he's going to repeat the motion until he's touching the edge of the stage. So let's try that. So when the sprite is clicked, He's going to repeat that until he touches the edge of the stage. So those are just 3 different ways we can get our sprite to move across the stage. Now, if you want your sprite to move, don't forget to change the costume. You can throw that into the repeat loop with the motion. And of course, you always should get a wait block in there so he doesn't change costume so fast that you can't see him. So let's see what happens when we have him change costume. So there he goes. He looks like he's walking. So not only is he moving across the stage, but he's changing his costume, which makes him look like he's actually walking. So let's have fun with that and play around with the repeat loops, the forever loops, changing costumes, and see what we can create.